My name is Udayan Tannen. I'm a PhD candidate in the Design Lab at UCSD and part of the Just Transitions Initiative. Today, I'll be presenting our paper, Can Smartness Fail? The Charisma of High Tech as Class Politics. This is joint work with my co-authors Lily Irani, also from UCSD, Sarah Fox from Carnegie Mellon, and Vera Khovanskaya from University of Toronto. Scholarship in design and HCI on tech-enabled infrastructures often examines who participates in their design, who is empowered to make decisions about them, and who stands to benefit from their implementation. We pursue those questions in our paper through an investigation of the class politics of public-private partnerships in smart cities, a model widely promoted as the best practice to deliver tech-enabled infrastructure. Our key argument in the paper is that discourses of smartness through these partnerships promise innovation and efficiency for all, but in practice, they forward upper class interests, consolidating elite control and bypassing public accountability in the process. By upper class here, we mean the property and company owners, their managers, and politicians representing higher income constituencies that we saw in our historical analysis. We analyze a smart mobility project in San Diego to ask what would designers need to understand or do differently to meaningfully engage in these civic struggles. In our study, we unpacked a public-private partnership between a private transportation startup and the city government who operated a door-to-door electric shuttle service in downtown San Diego. Just like popular rideshares Uber and Lyft, the shuttles could be hailed through a smartphone app. The central promise was that it would subsidize its operating costs entirely through advertising on the exterior of the vehicle, and hence the name Free Ride Anywhere Downtown, or FRED for short. I will present our findings by first going over our methods. Next, I will go through how untested innovation in the form of FRED prevailed over established solutions in public buses. Then I will unpack the class politics behind the sustained support for FRED despite its failures. And finally, I'll discuss how what we learned could be useful to fellow design researchers engaged in the public sphere. This study is part of a 6-year-long collaboration with a worker collective in San Diego, where driving workers have been excluded from key decisions about public transportation development. These workers posed the initial questions around how public resources were being allocated for transit development in the city that led us to examine FRED. Our analysis employed historical research methods to trace and analyze the trajectory of FRED. We base our analysis on a combination of publicly accessible documents, including 5 public records requests, over 150 planning documents and news articles, 6 hours of public meetings, as well as 3 oral history interviews. We use situational analysis to analyze our data. It is a qualitative method that pays attention both to the words and meanings people use to organize their lives and the ways institutions and experts influence those words and meanings. Situational analysis proceeds by mapping how different actors, their institutional relations, and their interests come together. So we did that for the FRED project. This let us understand not just what happened, but how as a function of who was positioned where, who had influence, and who was left out of decisions made. Our study period begins in the early 2010s in downtown San Diego, where there was a well-established need to reduce parking demand. To understand how FRED, which was completely untested, emerged as the preferred choice over buses, we must first understand what kind of development was going on in San Diego at that time. Through the 2010s, city officials in San Diego were busy transforming downtown from an area dense with government offices, state services, and mixed income retail into a hub for banks, finance, tech companies, tourists, and luxury housing. Smart city initiatives were also a prominent part of the city's development strategy. For example, the city was deploying smart streetlights with the promises of generating data to fuel sustainable planning and civic app development. But in reality, they were only being used for surveillance. Clean energy grids and electric vehicles signified the city's commitment to innovation and its effort to attract innovators, earning San Diego a feature as a world smart city by National Geographic. So around this time, the city conducted a study to tackle parking demand downtown through a shuttle system. The study evaluated peer cities in the US and conducted many focus groups with city residents. It concluded with a detailed solution to add 3 high-frequency bus lines connecting different parts of the city to downtown. However, the study was pretty quickly dismissed due to its high cost and lack of public funds to realize it. But when there was an opportunity to partner with a new startup in San Diego, which was operating small electric beach shuttles, downtown planners and city officials spurred into action. The proposal would have Fred's parent company operate shuttles that would be hailable through a smartphone app, and the service would operate door to door, ferrying passengers within downtown. In their pitch to the city, the company promised that Fred's shuttle would be completely free for passengers, that as it scaled up, it would be able to ferry up to 1 million passengers annually, almost 2 times as much as the initial bus system. And while it would need a loan from the city to get the service started, Fred would pay for itself through revenue gained from wrapping its shuttles in ads. Now, I'm sure at this point, many of you, or at least some of you, are thinking, this proposal sounds too good to be true. So hold on to that thought because we will get to that very soon. First, let's see who was the target of Fred's pitch. Civic San Diego was the agency put in charge of downtown redevelopment and was trying to attract real estate and business investment. They had formed a partnership to promote and operate the new shuttle service with Downtown San Diego Partnership, a nonprofit with a charter for downtown property and business improvement. These organizations primarily had members from a variety of business sectors downtown, including real estate, technology, banking, law, defense, energy, and tourism. Notably, though, workers and renters, from white collar to taxi workers to janitors, had no representation. Fred was appealing to Civic San Diego's board because the company promised a low cost burden to the city. It was more flexible since it offered door to door service. And finally, it aligned with their innovative vision for San Diego. Decision makers likened it to a city sponsored free Uber. While the initial bus proposal came from thorough projections and resident input, Fred's pitch was approved without any studies or evidence on its ability to reduce parking demand. So, how did it perform? Did it live up to the company's pitch? So, to recap, in Fred's pitch, the company promised that the service would be completely free to both the city and passengers while scaling up to providing 1 million rides. In its first year of operation, the company estimated $500,000 in operating costs to the city, forecasting to provide 400,000 rides for free in exchange. But after 1 year of operations, they had spent 1.1 million in public dollars on operating costs and provided 100,000 rides, over twice the amount the company estimated for only a quarter of the rides. This empirical failure should have been disqualifying, but it continued to be renewed for 9 more years and received a total of $11 million in public subsidy from the city. So why was Fred, undersubscribed and over budget, able to sustain itself? To unpack that, we analyze Fred through the lens of charismatic technologies, a concept advanced by Morgan Ames. She highlights the narratives that technology can mobilize to organize key actors into action by promising certain futures that align with their values, aspirations, and ideologies. Fred's champions saw it as part of a larger vision for San Diego redevelopment, where San Diego needed to be made into a place for innovators, tech entrepreneurs, and affluent residents, and by implication, not for low to middle income workers and residents. For affluent residents who chose to drive despite myriad public transit options downtown, Fred promised a city sponsored Uber ride around downtown. For real estate developers, Fred promised economic development in the form of rising property value. For elite politicians, Fred demonstrated San Diego's innovative spirit, and promoting it could bring in more tech entrepreneurs and venture capital into the city. While its significant underperformance was questioned in public meetings, what traveled far and wide in the press was the charismatic narrative that upper class actors put together of Fred as innovative, sustainable, and smart, and downtown San Diego as the place where it was made possible. So, to wrap up Fred's story, in 2025, Fred had received a total of close to $11 million in city funding. Its latest ridership numbers showed that over the past year, it had completed less than 100,000 rides. It was not free anymore, charging passengers $2.50 per ride. So at this point, if you got even 10% as irritated as we did learning about Fred, then there is some good news. When putting together this presentation, we learned that Fred is dead. But what can designers engaged in the public sphere take away from Fred's case study? Well, in the paper, we came up with four heuristics that the design community can use to strengthen our capacities to study neoliberalism in action. I'll only talk about one of those here. And as we saw, Fred's champions positioned the service as innovative despite its lack of performance. In doing so, they contributed to a narrative of symbolic progress, creating an image of urban innovation aimed at attracting wealthier professionals. This is one way how smart infrastructures advance neoliberal policies, wherein public sector funding flows towards performing innovation rather than solving genuine citizen needs. Another takeaway worth considering is what would it have taken to stop Fred and fund buses? In the case of Fred, we saw that a participatory research process that overwhelmingly supported expanding bus service was insufficient to stop the rollout of Fred. We argue in the paper that it was because the only organized voices in the room were downtown business and real estate reps who benefited from Fred and thus supported it. In the paper, we contrast that with what happened in Denton, Texas, where when the city proposed sweeping transit privatization, unions formed a coalition and successfully pushed back through sustained political action. Our own critical sensibilities against Fred were honed through a 6 year long action research project with taxi workers in San Diego, where we've been pushing to have their voices included in transit planning decisions. So, to conclude, I believe if we, as critical design researchers, want our participatory and socially just technology designs to be realized, we must work in coalition with organized civil society to vet, contextualize, and counter knowledge public officials and companies produce to push for innovative, technology driven market reform. Thank you for listening to me, and I apologize that the immigration situation in the US did not allow me to be there. My email and a link to the paper and our work with taxi workers should be in front of you right now, and I urge you to please reach out to me if you have any thoughts, critiques, or questions about our paper.